Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I'm super glad to have you all here tonight. I'm really glad to see that there are a lot of people that are coming for the first time here. Thank you, the Lyon guys that are coming directly from Lyon to hear our conference. Thank you to all the alumni of our programs that are already here. So we have a lot of alumni back in the back of the conference. We also have former students that are right now in our programs, and we also have over there the French Tech Ticket people. So we are hosting some startups from the French Tech Ticket. So they are from India, from Brazil, from Mexico, and from Australia. So how, and thank you for being here also. I see also a lot of new faces. So I just want to know which one are never coming to Schoolab, which was the first time that coming here tonight. Wow, a lot, perfect. So welcome. I'm glad that you are here, and I hope you will come more often. For a start, first of all, I want to present you what is Schoolab, what we do here. But before that, I will present you Jean-Claude really quickly. So, so we are here tonight because Jean-Claude, 2 years ago, had the brilliant idea to start a Schoolab. So for start the presentation of a Schoolab, we are an innovation studio. We start 12 years ago with Jean-Claude, who is the founder of a Schoolab. We work with corporates, students, and startups. So that's the thing that differentiates us for all the other companies that work in innovation and entrepreneurship. We put together these three kind of people, and we make them work together. So there are some information that I have. We have already more than 300 alumni. We work with more than 2,000 companies, and we are present in 5 different countries. So tonight we have a special guest. So it's the next one. It's our partner in Berkeley. So it's Mark Coopersmith. So I want to present you, Mark. So he's here tonight to present you how to change from the traditional education to the entrepreneurship mindset. But he's also here to see their alumni. So thank you, you for being here. We also have the actual cohort, so the students that will be with him in August, from August to December. So maybe you can just raise your hand so we can see where are you. The ones that are coming start the program this year, so they are there. Okay, so then we will present you them. So before to start with the conference of Mark, I will present you how we will split the evening. So we will start with the Mark presentation. Then Carlota, so she's Carlota. She's that's the girl that make it happen tonight. She will present our program, the program that we did with Berkeley. And then at the end, we will have a panel of alumni of this program. So they spent 4 months last year in Berkeley with Mark. So they will tell you a little bit about what was their experiences, their experience there, and how was their experience to come here and try to put all the mindset that they learned there here in action. And then you can ask them all the questions you have about their experience, okay? So thank you all again to be here. I'm super glad, and let's Mark learn us a little bit more about the changes between traditional education and entrepreneurship mindset. Thank you. That's Mark family.
And the clicker. Oh, perfect. We good? Excellent. Hi, guys. So it is so great to be here in Paris. Thanks for ordering up the rain. For those of you who studied with me last year, and this is actually going to be our 5th year of running this program. We've had this incredible drought in California for the last 5 years, and this year it just rained and rained and rained. So finally I said I'm getting away from California, and I came to Paris, and it rained. So hopefully we have some sun this weekend. I'm here to talk a little bit about how we teach innovation and entrepreneurship at UC Berkeley, and share with you a little bit about the program, the LaBridge program and the Learn to Launch program. And also I'd love to meet anybody who's coming to Berkeley that's here tonight. Please come up and say hello to me, because it would be great to meet you. And for some of you who may be thinking about joining, if you have some questions about the program you're going to meet or see, there's a lot of alumni that are here. Ask them. You'll hear from some of them as well. But it would be great to speak with you, and I'm happy to share some thoughts about what we'll be doing and what's a great fit, etc. So what I wanted to do is start with a little bit about this topic of how do we think about and teach innovation and entrepreneurship. Just this week, it's hard to believe, back in Berkeley, I was talking to a group of scientists, including a few Nobel Prize winners, which is one of the great things about coming to UC Berkeley. And a number of them were in the process of saying, how do we really start businesses? We don't do a very good job of taking our science and turning it into businesses. So they asked me to come speak to them about the business of science. And I thought about that, and being in Berkeley, because we always think a little differently anyway, I turned it around and I said, no, let's talk about the science of business. Because people don't always think that business is a science, because there's a science to it. And in particular, what we do, is we talk about the science of launching and building startup businesses. So there is a science to it. There's an art to it as well, but there's a science to that. So that's what we spent time talking about. And I thought about that as I was on the plane, saying, okay, let's talk a little bit about the science of building these startup businesses here. And one of the ways that I wanted to draw some distinctions between what we do in Berkeley and in Silicon Valley in general, and the way a lot of people think about startups, is to start with an example. Now, has anybody ever used this app on your phone called Bourbon? B-U-R-B-N? Anybody? No. So, and that makes sense now, because that app failed. It was funded by Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest, most successful venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. And it was founded by a number of young, smart engineers. And it was kind of in the earlier days of smartphones. And they put together an app that was really a series of apps. It had e-commerce and shopping, it had social, it had photography, it had gaming, it had a lot of these different elements. And as they went to the marketplace and asked their beta customers, what do you think about this? Their beta customers came back and they said, well, it actually kind of sucks. They go, what do you mean it sucks? It's got all the apps you need in one place. And they said, no, actually, may I borrow your phone for a second? I'll give it back. Well, actually, that's a nice phone. No, they said, actually, I have all the apps I need right here, and I don't need you to tell me which e-commerce or social or photo app I should be using, so thank you very much, but we don't like it. And they were just about to flush the several $1 million worth of investment in the 1.5 or 2 years worth of work down the toilet when they heard, kind of through all that noise of we don't like it, they heard this. Well, that's kind of a nifty little photo app you have. And they go, yeah, well, the photo app was the smallest piece of it. They go, yeah, but it's pretty cool. So a month later, they launched with just the photo app, and they got rid of everything else. And that's a pretty good thing, because the photo app was Instagram. They went on to raise a round of funding at $500 million, sell their company to Facebook at $1 billion. That stake's now worth about $5 or $6 billion. And it was only by listening and iterating and talking to customers that they were able to turn a failure into a success. Because people weren't using their product the way they expected them to use it. So that's some of the mindset. Now, I'm going to come back to this, and one of the reasons I start is I wrote a book called The Other F Word, How Smart Leaders, Teams, and Entrepreneurs Put Failure to Work. Now, most of the time, when you fail, you use the other F word. But the key thing around this is, how do you limit the damage of failure? How do you iterate more quickly? How do you think about it? And that's very much a Silicon Valley mindset. Let me ask a quick question. What % of startups fail? Yeah, 80 or 90%. Depends how you do the math. Which means chances are you're going to fail, and even those that succeed come really close to failing a number of times. So having that orientation and not just assuming that everything's going to work the way you expect is part of the way that we approach this. Resilience, experimentation, creativity. Now, here's a company that gets it, and that's Google. This is on the Google headquarters. This is called Stan the Dinosaur. I know a couple of our students have been there. Now, Stan the Dinosaur exists for two reasons. One of the reasons is that they actually excavated his bones about 2 miles from there. So a few million years ago, Stan was running around what's now Silicon Valley. But secondly, Stan is there to remind everybody about one crucial thing. If you don't evolve, you will become extinct. And if there's a lesson that is embedded in Silicon Valley and the whole San Francisco and entrepreneurial approach, it's evolve, react to change, make change happen. Now, what's interesting about Google is Google isn't even Google anymore. Google became Alphabet. Now, Google's no longer a startup, obviously. It's a $750 billion market cap company. I have a question I want to ask you guys. I just thought of that. But what's interesting about this is Google said, we've created all this value based on this great search algorithm and our AdWords business. But 20 years from now, because Google's only 20 years old, 20 years from now, it's unlikely that we're going to be one of the most valuable companies in the world based on that. So they created Alphabet to go out and create new types of businesses. Businesses like self-driving cars, space exploration, medical devices, and all of those are their startups now. And now they're running Google, the search business, like a traditional business. So I have two questions at this point. The first one is, how many people used Google in the last week? Did any of you guys get your check from Google? Did PayPal, any funds come in? Because think what Google did with all of those searches. They monetized every single one of them. You know, how many people used Google or Google Maps or Waze in the last week or month? A lot of us. What does Google do? They monetized all of that. What if you're in a business that Google focuses on? What does Google do? They give it away for free, and they make boatloads of money on it. So they don't only innovate in products, they innovate in business models. So we think a lot about business model innovation as well. And Google knows a lot of these things fail because they shut things down all the time, like Google Glass. You remember that, shut down. I was supposed to go for a ride in the self-driving car, but the self-driving car actually shut down. You can see the shadow of the guy in the back. He was debugging it. So these things happen, right? So here's my second question. As we think about innovation and entrepreneurship, I just talked about Google's innovation model. There are three companies that we think a lot about in Silicon Valley, or in general of tech leaders. We have Google. Who else do we think a lot about? Facebook. That's not, but that, right? Who else? Apple. Amazon. So let's use three out of those four. Next time I'm going to have to ask Facebook to this. They each have really different innovation strategies, right? Google, we just talked about. They have their moonshots in their core business. Apple, what's their strategy? Focus on a great brand and a great brand experience and great design, and mine that franchise. How about Amazon? Amazon just grows. We're going to sell books. Oh, now we're going to sell everything. Oh, look, we have servers. We're going to sell web services. Oh, we crashed FedEx and UPS and everything else. We're going to rent or buy planes and shipping. And they just keep growing. Now, the market cap of these three companies, Apple's the biggest at 800 billion. Google's somewhere between 650 and 750, and Amazon's at 400 billion. So I'm going to make my next call to my broker based on what you're going to tell me. Which of these companies is the first company to $1 trillion in market cap? Think about it. Lock in your vote, and let's go through the list. Let's go alphabetically. Amazon. Apple. Google. Didn't vote. All right. So that's interesting. So we have probably, what did you guys think? About a tie between Amazon and Google? I saw that too. And then Apple, the most valuable behind. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. You guys were a little different, though. I ask this question from time to time. In most cases, Amazon wins, even though they're the smallest, because people think that Amazon is just moving into markets it understands. All right, let's keep going. Nah, I'm going to get this. All right, here's a question I get a lot. Can innovation and entrepreneurship be taught? Now, since I teach innovation and entrepreneurship, you probably have an idea how I would answer that, especially those of you that may come and study with us or have studied. But here's really the question. Can you learn it? So how do you become a better entrepreneur? What do entrepreneurs do all the time? They take risks, right? Can you de-risk the startup process? Yeah, you can. So if we think about where we started, the science of business, the science of startup business, if I can help you understand how to de-risk your startup venture as you move along, have you become a better entrepreneur? I would say that you have. Are the chances of success more likely? You bet. Are the chances you're going to take all that money and crash and burn smaller? Yes. You may still crash and burn, but you'll do it with less money, most likely, because your venture capital investors will do much the same thing. So this is the way that we approach, one of the ways that we approach teaching it. Now, I studied innovation and entrepreneurship back in the 1980s when I was a student, a grad student at UC Berkeley. And the way that we taught it then versus the way we teach it now is really different. It was much more of an academic approach. As Anna said when we started, how do we teach this? This is not a classroom activity. Yes, we get in the classroom, but we get out of the classroom a lot. So I want to share a little bit of a story that my students have heard before as well about some of the changes between the way we did this, the way that we approach innovation entrepreneurship. So this is my daughter and me when it was her 18th birthday a few years ago. And I said, honey, what do you want to do on your birthday? Do we want to go up to the wine country? Do we want to do, even though I guess at 18 she was not drinking, but do we want to go out, do something? And she goes, no. I want to jump out of an airplane, and since Mom told me you did this when you were 18, I want you to come with me. Now, this was me about 20 minutes after that photo was taken, and it was a great experience. And a funny story about the guy behind me who's dressed all in black. He walks up, he's tethered to me, and he just introduces himself. He goes, hey, my name's Killer. It was like, true story. It was like, really? But it all worked out just fine. So what was interesting is it made me think back to the difference between when I jumped then and when I jumped just recently. When I jumped then, this was what we looked like. And that was after a day's worth of training of, tuck, roll, jump, all of these things. And this is what happened after 15 minutes of training. We just jumped out, and on the way down, Killer is telling me, you want to turn right, do this. You want to do a somersault, do that. And it was great, and we landed exactly where we were supposed to. When I did this many years ago, we trained all day, And we jumped out of the airplane, and there was a nice grassy field below us, but the wind came up, and we started drifting towards the orchards. Now, I had no idea what to do, even with all that training. They didn't teach us how to land in an orchard. Fortunately, we only landed in the cornfields, and my buddy ended up with a cast on his leg, and I was fine. But what happened? The moment we jumped out of the airplane, the realities that we faced were fundamentally different from everything we had trained for. Right? That happens. And that happens a lot in the way that we used to think about starting up businesses. We used to write business plans, do market research, write business plans, build the product, do all of that, and do it inside this kind of secret wall because we didn't want anybody else to know what we were doing. You know, not even our customers, by the way. We were going to launch this business. Now we create ventures and we use tools in real time. And we share much more. We're far more open. One of the things you'll find if you come to study with us is when you go out and ask people about their ventures, they will tell you all about their ventures in a way that is surprisingly candid and revealing. Why is that? Are they afraid you're going to steal their idea? Maybe. But what's more important than having a good idea? Executing on that idea. And the more people that you talk to that can maybe help you with that, make introductions, provide funding, give you insights into a problem that you hadn't thought about, the better off we'll be. Here's the challenge that we all run into for entrepreneurs today. It has probably never been easier to start a business, especially a tech business, than it is right now. How much information is available on the internet? How many resources can you get for free or cheap? Do you need to buy a rack of servers? No, you just go to Amazon and say, I just want server space. And by the way, I'm going to borrow a few different open source pieces of code, start to cobble something together, throw up a website in a day, and let's see if anybody will buy this. The problem that you have is everybody else has access to exactly those same resources. So unless you know how to use them better and faster, you're not going to be able to succeed against those individuals and competitors. You know, there's the expression, if there's two people, if there's a bear that's chasing you, and there's 2 or 3 of you, do you have to run faster than the bear? No, you just have to run faster than one person, right? Because the bear's going to get them. And there's an element of this here too, because you need to be able to be fast and nimble to be successful and experiment all the time. Because if you don't, you're never going to cross Geoffrey Moore's chasm here. So Geoffrey Moore is a strategist and an author, and he came up with this expression called the chasm. And what successful entrepreneurs do is they cross the chasm from those people who are the early customers into the mainstream. Think about when Apple first launched its products. At first, people weren't sure, but then they lined up, right? Even now, when there are new releases, people line up and they really want to grab get that phone. They were able to cross this chasm. But there are so many companies that don't. Now, this is another diagram of what entrepreneurs need to do. And that is, when you start here with 2 or 3 guys and gals in a garage and no cash, and you start thinking about how you're going to build your business, you start to go down into what we call the valley of death, which means you're spending money, you're not making any, nobody knows your product, nobody's buying your product. How the hell do you get out of the valley of death? You start prototyping, and you start creating early customers, and you start to build your market and your brand, and over time, and you raise funding, and you start to climb out of it. And we spent a lot of time talking about all the different life cycles, all the different stages of the entrepreneurial life cycle, the types of funding you get from angel to early stage venture capital to late stage venture capital and mezzanine financing. And we talk about how you can use alternative resources too, like crowdfunding. We've had a number of our cohorts, some of our students that have gone out and done crowdfunding. We had one group that went out to raise $100,000 from one of our Learn to Launch cohorts. It's the company Print. I don't know if any of you know Print, P-R-Y-N-T, which is a smartphone case that actually turns it into a Polaroid camera. But instead of $100,000, they raised $1.7 million. And then they got $4 million on top of that because the concept was validated, and they powered their way through this valley of death pretty darn quickly. So there's a lot of things that we learn about on what to do. So how do we do this? What is it that successful entrepreneurs do that's different? There are 3 different sets that they put to work. And those 3 different sets are the entrepreneurial tool set, skill set, and mindset. And we focus on all of these. Perhaps the most important is that mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset, but you need the tools and the skills to be able to really build that platform for growth. So every week, when we run this program, every week we deal with a different topic. On the tool side, we may talk about different ways of looking at markets, like market segmentation, or here's your total market, but where do you start? Where's your beachhead? What does that person look like that's going to be that early adopter to help you cross the chasm? And then we say, oh, this is what that person looks like. We're going to build a persona. We're going to build a persona of Clark, and we're going to understand what brands he likes, what his affinities are, what his passions are, where he gets his information, because that's important, because then we understand how to start to market and reach that particular person, because they're the ones that are going to power us through those early days, because we need them as our early adopters. We talk a lot about things like the customer life cycle. Once you know who your customer is, how does he or she become aware of you, know who you are, consider your product, and then buy it? And how do we turn them into advocates for you to help do that selling and marketing for you? What's your pricing strategy? Who here owns an Apple 7? A couple people, an Apple 7. Right, you paid $100 more than that phone's going to cost next month, right? Because we all know when Apple comes out with their phones, they price it high. Now, you're an innovator and early adopter too, though, which is good. But they price it high, they skim those profits off for those people that will, and then they move through the different pricing life cycle. Then there's different approaches like market entry and others that we think about pricing. And since we're talking about Apple, we also talk about how do you position your product. Now, Steve Jobs was a master marketer. This was him on the launch of the first iPhone. And here's what he said. You can get an easy-to-use and smart phone like the iPhone, or you can use a stupid phone that's hard to use like all of these others. So the only phone you would want would be the iPhone. Now, do you think these guys put themselves in the stupid and hard to use category? No, probably not. So we say, look, let's figure out how to look at markets in a more objective way so that we can appeal to our customers in a way that matters to them. And then we talk about skills. We do rapid prototyping. I'll give you an hour, and you have to come back with a prototype. One of them here is a heads-up driving display from a smartphone. This one is, it's not just for physical products, it's also how do we prototype digital products. You want to prototype an app? I'll give you an hour to do it. And after prototyping it, this product was actually made. So this is the toilet finder. And they go on. So think about how quickly you can prototype an experience and get feedback from your customers in that way. And when we talk about customers, we have to get out of the lab. We have to get out of the building. As our engineer here says, talk to customers. What do customers have to do with the products that we eventually want them to buy? Because many people who love to build products don't always like to talk to customers about their products. One of the things that we run into a lot, how many people here are engineers? Yeah, you guys are really great at building stuff. But how many of you really like to talk to customers, by the way? Oh, a few of you. All right, good, good. I love that. Because sometimes what happens is engineers will build a product, and they'll give it to you, and you're using it wrong. I take it back. Okay, you're using it wrong. I'll give it to you, and you're using it wrong. darn it, and you're actually using it wrong in the same way, and so are you. And as an engineer, I might be really frustrated because you actually aren't using my product the right way. Of course, embedded in that is the insight that you've solved a problem, just not the one you started out to solve. So we get out and we talk to customers a lot, or we do all sorts of real-time experiments as well. We do a lot of things around business models as well. And we say, is there a different way to sell it? If it's a product, can we turn it into a service? If it's a service, can we turn it into a product? If it's something people are paying for, can we give it away for free and make money the way Google does? We spend a lot of time on storytelling and communication because as an entrepreneur, your most important responsibility in many cases is to bring people along with you. Because it's hard to build a company, sell products, make products, and do all of that all by yourself. So you need to hire people, you need to bring on investors, you need to recruit partners, you need to do all of those other elements. And we talk a lot about pitching. What's a compelling pitch? But more importantly, how do you tell a story people care about? In fact, that's our final. If you come, the final is essentially our demo day and pitch competition. And then finally, here's the mindset. The mindset of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. So when we talk about an entrepreneurial mindset, what's a mindset? How do entrepreneurs think? How would you guys describe a Silicon Valley entrepreneur or an entrepreneur in general? Smart. Okay, good. So smart guys. What else? When we think about visionary, what else? Different. Risk takers. Disruptive. Agile. Move quickly, you bet. See opportunity. It's about change. I heard dreamers. These are all parts of, by the way, I've been here for the last 4 or 5 years talking about this program. That's the best bunch of answers I've heard. So really, it's just like, so this mindset is permeating so many places. I will say that, and I'll do this right now, with apologies to anyone from Denmark in the room. I was with a group of Danish government leaders and business executives that were in the process of trying to change the Danish healthcare system. They were studying with me at UC Berkeley for a week. So we were talking about this and we said, well, what do you think about entrepreneurs? Arrogant, rude, they're not good collaborators. There was not a single good thing about entrepreneurs. Now, at the end of the week, they kind of said, oh, we get it. But it was really interesting around kind of how that mindset and how this entrepreneurial ethos has not always permeated everywhere. So here are 10 traits. Here are my 10 traits of what makes for a great entrepreneurial mindset. You move fast. Number 1, you have a bias to action. Entrepreneurs don't really wait around a lot. Yes, you do analysis, but you do it on the fly. You jump out of the airplane. You've got that bias to action. Number 2, it is about change. You welcome change, but you also create change, because change creates opportunities. Donald Trump created opportunities. Love him or hate him. We're not here to talk about Donald Trump and my Berkeley politics, but love him or hate him, there are opportunities that Trump is creating with all the change that's going on. Technology creates change. Fashions change. Weather changes. Think about what's going on with global warming and what the implications are for cities. So there's so much that goes on around change, and we welcome and we want to create our own. We are eternally optimistic. Why? Because nobody likes to follow a pessimistic, cynical, grouchy entrepreneur. It's hard to create a team around that. And we're incredibly resourceful because we start with 2 or 3 of us in a garage and nothing but an idea, and we create Google or Intel or whatever else it is that we do. This concept of risk, and my thinking on this has evolved. Yes, we're risk takers, but more than that, it's how we understand risk. How do we experiment? How do we adopt the scientific method as our own and run real-time experiments so that we can manage and reduce our own risk levels? And we are intensely curious. We consume massive amounts of information. We have this innate curiosity. You know, sometimes you have a conversation with somebody and they are like boring their eyes into you and they're asking these almost invasive questions, and you know, and they are learning a bunch about you and they're interested in you, and they are also sucking all the information out of you. Because as entrepreneurs, that's what we do. We experiment all the time. We learn from our mistakes and our failures. Oh, I'll put in a brief pitch, and if anybody's interested, actually there's a lot of information for free. In the book that I wrote about failure, we looked at startups and we looked at companies of different sizes, and we came up with a 7-stage approach called the failure value cycle to do a better job dealing with failure. Respect that it happens all the time. 80 or 90% of companies fail. Rehearse for those failures so that when it does happen, you're not surprised. Recognize it early. Put in place the right metrics, early warning systems. React to failure properly when it happens, like Volkswagen did. Oh, no, not really, right? Or back in the US, like Wells Fargo did when our CEO blamed his employees for selling too many products. Learn from your mistakes by reflecting on what just happened. Put together your rebound strategy, and don't forget them. So put in place a way to remember those mistakes, because companies that learn from their mistakes are the ones that have the most resilient culture and long-term prospects. We know our customers really well, and I shared with you some of the things that we do with personas and the customer life cycle and going out and talking to them. So understanding our customers is hugely important. And finally, we are not very good with permission, but we do ask for forgiveness because we just go do it. Now, if you do all of these things right, my classmate is Scott Adams, so I like to quote him a lot. You might end up with one of these. By my calculations, we can make millions by combining a mortuary business and a garbage collection business. Our customers could simply leave the dearly departed, those who have passed away, by the curb for pickup. Hey, maybe we could add a pizza delivery service too. No, let's not push a good idea too far. So good entrepreneurs see the synergies and know when not to push it quite too far. Because here's what happens. This is your plan. It's pretty easy. I'm going to start up a business. I've got an idea. I'm going to borrow a little money from Uncle Joe, and we're just going to head off. And this is the reality. And this is actually the optimistic reality. And again, for those of us who have been entrepreneurs many times over, but also for those of us who have studied with me as well, even in our semester, we had more than a couple of these along the way. So we learn one of the great things about this. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to experience these things in a safe environment. By a safe environment, I mean one where the costs of your failure are not fatal. And if you do it in an environment like the cohort and the program we run at UC Berkeley, where you actually start up a business, go through all of those things that we talked about, deal with team dynamics, realize that people aren't going to buy your product, iterate and pivot, and find new opportunities, then when you're doing it for real, and a number of our ventures do get real, you already have those experiences under your belt. The last thing that I wanted to say before I turn this over is we often get a question, I often get a question, where do you start? What's a good idea? Where should you as an entrepreneur start? Here's my response. What are you passionate about? What do you really care about in life? Because when you're doing it for 20 hours a day, for 7 days a week, you better be passionate about it. Number two, where are you really good? And where can you put together a team where your whole team is really good? Because there's going to be a lot of good people out there, smart, talented, fast people trying to do the same thing. And then third, where is there a big market opportunity? Not a maybe opportunity 5 years out, but a big market opportunity right now. Where are there customers who have a problem and recognize it, are seeking a solution, and have money and are willing to pay for that solution? That's where a big market opportunity exists. And if you pull those together, you have a really interesting opportunity. That's where you start. And if you are frustrated in your current job or what you do because you are looking for a solution and you can't find it, sometimes scratch your own itch. That's exactly where the opportunity is. It's sitting right in front of you. So, personal example, I ran e-commerce for Sony. I started up a business for Sony, grew it, ran e-commerce, was looking for a solution, couldn't find it. I kept looking, I couldn't find it. I was Sony, I had all the money I needed to buy it. So I started building my own. And then other people came to me and said, that's a really good solution, can we buy it from you? Turns out Sony said, no, we're not selling e-commerce solutions. So I spun it out of Sony, and now that is inside Google. I took that through funding and growth. It's been acquired in Google. So look for those opportunities right in front of you because they probably are dealing right in your area of expertise and your current passion and values. So this is our program. We go through this kind of 4-step program. We define what those opportunities are. What's the opportunity? What are your vision and values? Let's put together a team. We even do that before you come to Berkeley. Then we learn. We go out, we do the customer discovery. We build prototypes. We create product market fit. And then we launch. What's your minimum viable product? How can you start to generate revenues? How can you get people using your product? What's your business model? What's your financial model? How do you start thinking about legal and organization structure? And then we accelerate. And all those other elements about adding more resources, being able to scale. We do this because every week we introduce new concepts. And then all of our student teams apply those learnings and create another layer on their business. They go out to customers or partners, get feedback, iterate that, and we add yet another tool or skill or element of the mindset. So here's some of our students. Come to Berkeley, you actually become our student, right? There's our, this is the very first day they show up, we get IDs. This is a visit, this is from our cohort of last year. This is a visit to the cyclotron at UC Berkeley, where we split atoms just up the hill from our campus. This is in 500 startups, as these guys are listening to Edith Young, who's a partner there. And for those of you guys who know Edith, she now runs their whole Asia fund. So in addition to the mobile fund, she's now doing all of Asia. And she's telling them, guys, this is the way it really is. You want money from 500 startups? Here's what I'm looking for. Here's our demo day. And pitching and taking a look at how are we going to look at the marketplace, or what are the different competitors, or what are the different markets that we might approach. So we do a big demo day. End of our demo day with our judges and our team. We even have an American-style graduation, which is really fun. We had the French Consul General join us as well and offer some remarks. So every year we get a little bit of the cap and gown, American graduation, and we do have a little bit of fun along the way as well. So that's a little bit about our program, and that's what we do. But as they say, you don't have to believe me, right? Because we're going to actually hear from some people who really have been through this. So let me turn this over to Carlotta. Carlotta?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for this insightful talk. So I'm going to be super brief because I know you guys want to hear from the actual people that went to Berkeley. So my name is Carlotta, and I work for Schoolab. I'm in charge of this amazing program. Just a few words about it. So this is the program that Mark was telling you about. So basically, it's a program that is in partnership with École Polytechnique, UC Berkeley, and Schoolab. And every year, we send around 40 students to Berkeley for 4 months. Within those 40 students, 50% come from Polytechnics, so engineering background, and 50% are recruited by us. So we basically recruit people from all disciplines who have a strong drive towards purpose, towards motivation, towards entrepreneurship, towards passion, towards excitement. People that would truly make the most out of Silicon Valley. And so we bring them, we ship them over to Berkeley in the first 2 weeks. So no one's got a team, no one's got an idea. Some people do have startups, but it's not the case for everyone. And so during the first 2 weeks, everyone gets to know each other, everyone mingles. We do loads of activities, brainstorming activities, loads of workshops as well. And so they make teams and they decide on a topic that they're passionate about and that they want to launch a startup in. And then in September, Mark and his colleagues start the program. So you get around 3 days of class per week, and the rest of the time is for you guys to be entrepreneurial within your own experience. So rent a car, go down to Palo Alto, meet people. You know, it's your chance to succeed as well. And so after 4 months, as Mark showed you, there's a demo day. You pitch your idea to business angels, to VCs, to everyone that you've actually met there. And the day after, you have a remise de diplôme, so you get your official certificate from Berkeley. And afterwards, if you are willing to continue working on your project, either continuing with your venture that you launched in Berkeley, or come up with a new venture, you can come here to Schoolab for 4 to 6 months to be incubated, to be supported through mentoring, through workshops, through loads of other activities, and we'll really accommodate to your needs. But so if you are actually very interested by this, we're still recruiting until May 4th, so that's next week, and then interviews will take place the week after. So please don't hesitate to talk to me. We also have our alumni here present. They're wearing a blue name tag, so try and chase them if you can. And then we also have our students who are going to leave with us in August who have a yellow name tag. But without further ado, I am so pleased to welcome a few of our alumni. So guys, coming up. Take a stool, yeah, great. En anglais, oui.
Can you change the slide?
J'ai oublié de montrer un truc en fait. Guys, I forgot to show something. Can you just get off the stage for 2 seconds? All right, normally should work. So this is a little video that was made at UC Berkeley with these people. So you're going to recognize a few faces. So it's a short video about the program.
The Learn to Launch program at Berkeley does exactly what the title promises. It teaches aspiring entrepreneurs how to launch a venture. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? How do you form a team around that? How do you create a prototype and take it to marketplace? And then incorporate learnings when you fail. How much capital do you need to hit that next milestone, and how do you pitch that to an investor? All of those and more are the topics that we cover in this intensive, immersive 3.5 month program at UC Berkeley.
I'd say the whole Bay Area way of thinking changed my conception of entrepreneurship in a way that here you're just one among 1,000 people or 1 million people who wants to launch a startup, and so you learn to be more aggressive and more daring into your approach to the startup.
But what happens here is we put together teams where we're bringing in students from across the disciplines. A team might have engineers, coders, designers, business folks, and what they can produce together is absolutely greater than what any of these students would accomplish on their own.
I love the fact that when you try to create a venture, you can learn to iterate fast, and you're not afraid of the consequences of failing. I'm definitely going to take this back to France.
We're doing this all really at the global epicenter of innovation and entrepreneurship, the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. So when you come here to study with us, not only do you know that we are right here at ground zero, and the way that we approach and teach this topic is influenced by all of this entrepreneurial activity, but we also bring globally acknowledged experts into our classroom and open up the entire Silicon Valley and San Francisco Bay Area ecosystem for our students to attend meetups and hackathons and talks and conferences and all of these other activities.
I think the great thing here is the network and learning from experience from others that have gone through the same thing as you, and getting feedback and any of the advice you can is the most valuable thing.
Learn to Launch is so hands-on that the ultimate test is the final pitches at the end of the semester, where they're judged by their instructors, by their peers, by outside entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, people who are out there living that life.
If I had to speak to people that were considering coming here, I would say do it, be ready to learn, be ready to fail fast, be okay about it. Everything is here and it's just up to you to go and take it and go look for the resources that you need.
Come here, come to the epicenter of entrepreneurship and innovation of the world in the San Francisco Bay Area and learn how to launch your next venture.
All right, now you can come back on stage. Can I leave this picture? I think it's cool. No, all right. So before you guys can ask open questions, I think you guys should introduce yourselves, and I will start with one question. What was it? If you were to look back in hindsight today, what would you stick with in terms of your experience and the sense of being in Berkeley for 4 months and what you discovered? So yeah, go ahead.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm Salome. So I think, I'm from ESSEC Business School, so I just graduated. And if I had to look back, there's one thing that I would take back here is the great encounters that I've had there. I'm thinking about a lot of authors of the books that we were reading in class that we actually got to meet. We met in class, including our teachers, so that's amazing. We met Guy Kawasaki there. I don't know if that rings a bell for anyone. I met great CEOs, great founders of great companies. I'm thinking about one, John Barnes, that founded Gymboree. It's a multi-million-dollar company, and that was really insightful. So those are people with a lot of experience, and we get to meet them not only in class, but also by actually going out there and getting out there, putting ourselves out there, yeah.
So for me, first thing first, I'm JD, stands for Jean David. I'm from Neoma Business School, and I haven't graduated yet. Where to start, guys? It's been incredible. It's been incredible. If I had to pick one compelling, like an example of what to expect from this experience, I would pick the night of the Trump election. So Mark invited us to come and see the election at his house in the north of San Francisco, and that was amazing to live a bit of American history there with him, and well, that's one experience. But of course, that has nothing to do with startups, and that's also why we went there. I mean, California and Silicon Valley is so rich. You talked about the people that you can meet there. I mean, the spirit is very special. People are open. The French community is active and really open, and they'll tune you in the network. Yeah, you meet incredible people, and one of the other strengths of the program. So Learn to Launch is kind of the American name of the program. Here we call it Le Bridge. And actually, in the cohort, so we were 40 French students going there, and half of the promotion were top French engineers. And I think that's one of the best strengths of this program, is that you get to work. I have a business background, but you get to work with top class engineers and work around projects, and we're all on the same page and trying to learn how to launch. Well, I'm just hand it over to you, Charlotte.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Charlotte. I graduated from Sciences Po in economics last year. I would say one of the best thing about the program, it's one of the things that you already said a bit, is about the people that you meet. It's people with very different backgrounds that are interested in different things, and that you don't really get to meet otherwise. We tend to stay with business students and Sciences Po students in real life, and it's really good experience to be able to really work with them for a few months. To share this experience, you're kind of all together. You have time to work, to meet, to do different stuff. And one of the most interesting thing for me was to be able to meet these people. I met Rashad, my co-founder. And it's actually one of the most valuable things in the program. And that's it.
They're together in business, not in life.
That was needed. Gotcha. So hi, my name is Rashad. I'm in the engineer part of what the JD presented you with. I'm about to graduate from École de Toulon and École Polytechnique. Besides everything that was said, is like it was a tremendous experience. In fact, if I have like one advice I could give you, is go ahead and meet some people. Everybody here is open. There is open. I, for myself, met people from Apple, Google, Tesla, everyone who's a hardware integrator. And one special meeting. That was thanks to Mark, who invited us to volunteer at an event, and where I met one of the top partners of Sequoia Capital. I don't know if you know this one. Yeah, right. I met him at the toilet, basically. No, true story. I tried to find a way of contacting him after meeting him in the toilet. That was a bit weird. So I thought that maybe a meme would be the good solution. It was. Fact is that we didn't, let's say, present him with our best side when we talked to him. It was horrible.
But we learn from failure.
We do. So yeah, basically it's a tremendous experience. Everybody's pretty crazy there. The mindset is totally different, and just if there's one advice would be just go ahead and try it if you don't have anything to lose. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Literally no taboo, guys. You can ask absolutely anything. So go ahead.
Well,
shoot.
The thing is, we didn't talk about the program itself. So if you have questions on the program,
about anything, about the program, about their experiences,
or the valley,
about
actually,
how they lived it.
Yeah.
I can start. Sorry. I can start. I mean, I think we all have a lot, well, I do. I think that there's a lot to learn there from failure, and I think we've all had this roller coaster adventure there. First thing to mind, like, we constituted a team of 3 people, and half along the way, I lost one of my teammates. That's a failure. Couldn't keep everyone together. That also means that well, you have to rethink your structure, rethink what your goals are, how you're going to take this to the next step, and continue. So the reality is that the program you will experience will teach you a lot about failure, and it can come also from the people. So it's where it hurts most, because as we said, we learned a lot from meeting people and losing a team. He's alive, by the way, it's just, just making this clear. But just like having your team disrupted at one point, you know, you learn a lot from that.
So with Rashad, actually, we were working on a different project with a different team at the beginning of the program. So we were 4 of us. We worked for 2 months on a project that was completely different. And after 2 months, we realized that we were not really enjoying the subject itself. We were not really working well as a team. We were good friends, but not necessarily good colleagues. So that was complicated because you need to deal with egos and feelings and friendships, and it's always complicated thing to do. So that was one of the big thing. We have talked about it a lot. We had like the people in the program to talk to, also with Mark, with Whitney, with one of the teachers. So I think that talking about it, realizing that you have a problem, and then being able to come up with a solution. So for us, it was a different project. So that was a big fail that we experienced.
Rash, do you have one? I have one if you want.
Oh, go ahead.
So mine is, so I worked with, let me see, 3 engineers from the program back there. And one day, so we worked on a hardware project. I can tell you more about it afterwards if you want. And we wanted to go out as they taught us. So we wanted to visit big VR, virtual reality and AR companies. And one of the guys we met at one meeting, like you have every now and then, like every night in San Francisco. Berkeley is in the San Francisco Bay, by the way. And you have like meetings every night. And one of the guys we met actually invited us to visit his company, which is a huge AR company called Meta. And so we went there hoping to seek. I don't know what we were looking for, but we went totally unprepared, and we just ridiculizes ourselves. It was a shame, and I mean, always prepare for a meeting, right? But we didn't, and yeah, so that was tough.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one.
So what she didn't tell you about our failure is that before working with the team of 4, I presented like the whole cohort with a project, and I got literally no one wanted to work with me. That was a huge failure for me. I was like, I thought this was a good idea, and it wasn't actually, because we worked on it after like this team's project, and then we dropped it when we came back here, and so yeah, up and down and up and down, and yeah. Failure is everywhere. The only question is what you make out of it. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to repeat your question because otherwise it doesn't get recorded. So did any of you come to Berkeley with a preconceived idea?
I did. And as I said, huge failure, like big time. That's mean. But yeah, beside the fact that having an idea, maybe it's fine to think about how you're going to present it, because the way it's in your head is really different from the way you're going to present with it and what people are going to do with it. But yeah.
Yeah, I came with a project that I had been working on for a couple of months. And I think that what Rashad mentioned about pitching it the first time, it was my very first time pitching. I mean, pitching in front of a cohort. And the other times I had been pitching it to people that we were getting on board with us, it was completely different experience to try to pitch it to people that don't necessarily care about the same things than you do. And especially a crowd of engineers as well, because half of the class was only engineers. That was a real challenge. And God, when I look back, we were so like we were terrible at pitching. So that was a really interesting experience for us, I think.
Go ahead.
I didn't come up with an idea. I didn't came there with an idea. I would tend to say that maybe for the next people, it's interesting to think before coming, not necessarily about ideas, but about the thing that you want to work on, thing that you're really interested in, subjects that you're really passionate about, because most of what gives you the energy is really your own motivation and why do you want to do that. And I think like thinking about the why and the motivation and what is really at the core of your project is really important. So maybe that's one of the advice that I could give. And
so you don't necessarily have to go there with a project. It's just some love for a challenge and entrepreneurship. And well, at the beginning of the program, you just form teams around common passions, common sometimes ideas. People join groups, people don't. But yeah, it's we're all there to do this. So we form teams pretty easily, and before the program starts, we went on a road trip to get to know each other, because you don't want to work with people you don't actually know. So that's California is great for that. Also, road trips.
So, for instance, if you have a startup already and you apply to this program, it's okay for you, obviously, to work on it as long as you are able to convince others to work with you. If no one, like Rashad, for instance, wanted to work with him, people have to set aside their project and work on something else, and then come back to Paris and work back on their project.
I mean, the whole point is, if you can't convince your peers, why would anyone invest in your company?
As harsh as this sounds, it's true. We're going to take one more question, I guess. Yeah? I'm going to repeat the question. So after this amazing experience, do you think you're going to launch a startup?
So, yes. We actually switched projects a second time because we're a bit of a pivot professional now. But we are working on a project right now that we are launching in Paris. So, yeah. Maybe Rashad wants to explain you. Maybe just after.
Unless another great company catches my heart, definitely yes.
That's the whole point. Sometimes you just realize it's, well, of course it's not as simple as that, and you're there to learn to launch. That doesn't mean that you go out and knowing how to launch. So yeah, it's not easy, even here in Paris. And Paris doesn't have the same stakes as the Valley, and so it's a whole new process again. You have to study a new market and new opportunities. One more. So,
Way is friends behind the US, right?
Yeah. So why is the French ecosystem lagging behind the American one or the Californian one? You need to help me guys on this. Yeah, sure.
Maybe, yeah. I think that first of all, it's like there are many startups here in Paris than in California, basically. Maybe people tend not to be as open-minded as we think they are. The idea is, sorry, it's another way. We think people are not open-minded here, but they are actually, and so all you have to do is put yourself out there also. And there is something in our head, and we don't tend to think, oh, it's not California, so we're not going to make it, and that's totally false. There are a lot of tremendous startups here in Paris. You just have to find them. There are just less. Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that we're behind, but I think the fact to be in an ecosystem where everybody is talking about startups and working on those projects is super motivating. I think because you're there, you kind of like get this mindset. It allows you to be, I think, a bit more open-minded. And actually, one of the things that surprised me when coming back here is that you tend to say, okay, people in San Francisco are really open to meetings, to meeting people, etc. And I've actually met tens and tens of people in France. So I think it's maybe because we changed a bit in San Francisco that we were able to actually do the same things here in Paris. I don't know if that answers the question.
I would just add that I completely agree. It's a question of mindset. It's not necessarily that we're behind. It's just that people aren't putting themselves out there and trying to meet people. But once you have that mindset, you'll see that even here, like just by coming here, you can meet tons of people and have that. One thing I would say though is that people seem to be more open to talk in toilets currently, and you know, just grab some coffee. It's just, you know, in their culture already, and it's starting to grow in France. So we're behind, but not that far away.
Also, money. I mean, no, but it's not just punchline. I think it's the core reason why we're behind, because they've created an attractivity of the valley, and every investor want to go there and look for the next unicorn and sexy startup. So, yeah, money is a pretty big factor why we're still behind, because our investments and the funds here are not as big as the American ones. But they taught us that the Silicon Valley isn't American today. It belongs to the world, because you have so many nationalities, so many people from all around the world working there and trying to go at it and create the next big thing.
There's a lot of, to do with our fear of failure in France. It's also anchored in our culture. So VCs or investors, whatever, they don't invest as much because they fear taking risks taking risks with us. So absolutely, failure is a big word, and that's the other.
Is there one last question, or? All right, go. Which market is easier to conquer between France and the US?
I think just the US is bigger. So in terms of market, there's just also more people, so you can test better. I would tend to say it also depends on what market you're talking about. In our experience, the fact to test was super easy in San Francisco because people are maybe more used to it. They have startups coming every single day, testing stuff with them, so maybe they're more open to the fact that it's not ready yet and it's a prototype and you don't need to explain it to them. But
it's definitely easier to launch, I think, in the US, because they're eager to see new technologies and new innovation overall. But it may not be as easy to conquer the market, regardless of the industry. So I think another factor to take into account is how well you know the market, and we're French foremost, so it may be easier for us to launch in France because we know people here. But if you get acquainted enough while you're out there to Americans and their culture, it may be easier for you to launch and actually conquer that market.
Yeah, another reason is competition. For one idea, in the US you might have 20 startups or 50 startups working on the same idea. Here in France you have less competition. And as you said, you may know the market better. So for a first startup experience, I don't know, I haven't launched anything yet, but it might be the go-to first startup. It might be easier here. And by the way, many French people back there tell us that it's easier to start with France, and then once you have a good product that generates traction, then you go and scale it in the Silicon Valley to conquer bigger markets, and not only the American markets but also global markets. They teach you to think big, and not to think, because in France when we say international, we mean Switzerland or Belgium, right? There, when they talk about international, they mean the world. So they have ambitions that we don't. That might also, to bounce back on your question, have to do with the difference between the ecosystems.
Maybe one last number is like, if you want to get like 300 million people to test your product here in Europe, you will need at least, I don't know, 10 languages. Or in the US, all you have to do is just spread it around in the country. So basically that answers your question. You don't have any, just take Slack, for example. I think that they translated their landing page into French just a couple of months ago. And you see they have already been a unicorn for not decades, but you see my point.
Beers?
Are we over?
Yes, we are.
Can we
well,
eat?
thank you so much.
I'm
There
hungry.
are 4 alumni here, but there are a bunch of other ones in the room. If you could share, like, you know, just those are the people to track if you want to talk to them. So everyone's super friendly here. There's going to be beers and pizzas coming up really, really soon. In the meantime, you've got wine and you've got some apéro. Feel free to mingle and drink and have fun. And thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you to Mark. Thank you to Mark, of course. I'll take a